Welcome all. I'm Wade Crowfoot, our Natural Resources Secretary. We're going to give it just a couple of minutes, and then we'll begin our dialogue with my friend and colleague, Jared Blumenfeld. Jared, you ready for a good Earth Day and Earth Day week?
I am. I mean, feels like this is going to be a big one.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got the president having a leaders summit in DC, got all kinds of announcements that you and I are making.
Absolutely.
Governor.
Good. Well, let's get underway. Again, I'm Wade Crowfoot and I lead our Natural Resources Agency. And we thought we would actually start off the week of Earth Day in sort of a fun and formal way. My colleague Jared Blumenfeld and I find ourselves in a lot of conversations together that are heavily policy focused and very solemn, specifically around what we need to be doing on climate change and all of these different challenges we face in California and the world. So we thought we'd take a departure from that to begin this important week by having a conversation with Jared about a pretty remarkable experience that he had in the last decade, which is between two very important jobs, taking time to journey the Pacific Crest Trail just a few years ago. And I've been bugging Jared for some time to share with me more about the trip. And so this is selfishly a great, I'm really looking forward to this. But let me, James, ask you to move to the next slide. Before we do that, I just want to recognize that we are celebrating the 51st occurrence of Earth Day later this week. This is my daughter celebrating last year. And this is a great time for us to take stock of all that we've done together across our state agencies, with all of our partners in government and outside of government. And of course, to identify what we need to be doing, what else we need to be doing. And of course, there's a lot of work in front of us. Next slide. So this week, we're going to use the opportunity to have some conversations organized by the Natural Resources Agency. The next couple of days will be in dialogue with our state conservancies. You may know that we have 10 state conservancies that are these interesting, unique, fairly nimble organizations within our state government in different parts of the state, all focused on bringing creative approaches to environmental conservation. So tomorrow we'll talk with some of the key conservancy leaders about how the conservancies work to advance the state's goals. And then the next day on Wednesday, we'll talk about what does the landscape look like moving forward for environmental conservation in the state, and then what is the role for our state conservancies. Thursday, which is of course the day, the Earth Day, and will be both a day of action that we'll be highlighting on social media. And then I'm going to be facilitating a conversation with some key external leaders on utilizing and integrating nature into all that we're doing to combat climate change, protect biodiversity, and advance equitable access. And then lastly, on Friday, we'll talk about some groundbreaking ocean science that's taking place through our Ocean Protection Council. So really excited for you to join. If you want to learn more, obviously just go to the resources.ca.gov website or follow us on Twitter or social media. Next slide. So Jared, excited to be with you here. Happy Earth Day week.
Yeah, it's I literally this is the time of year, Wade, that I get very nostalgic, because it's the time of year that you have to start the journey from south to north if you're going to do the PCT, because it's very kind of weather focused. So this is actually the top of Mount San Jacinto, which is, yeah, lots of epic stories about that on the trail.
So you're going to share with us a bit of a slideshow on your epic journey, but before we delve in, tell us what planted the seed for this journey. I think you were, President Obama had appointed you to be the regional director of our Environmental Protection Agency in the Western states, and you had done that for several years. What was the genesis of actually taking such a radical departure?
Well, two things. One, at the Department of Environment in San Francisco, where you and I first met, there was a really cool woman called Melissa Capria, and Melissa had kind of a tragic set of life circumstances, and she was just like, screw it, I'm going to go and do the PCT. And she came back to the Department of Environment and actually did in those times a real slideshow with real slides of I'd always loved hiking, but I'd never kind of understood the freedom of just being out there. And so that was one. And I'd been doing the EPA job and kind of working since I left school day in, day out. And I was just kind of tired, to be honest. And I was like, I want to remember why it is that I protect the environment. And I think I lost touch with that. And especially the jobs that you and I do were often as we are now, indoors. The air is, being circulated through a building. And I just wanted to enjoy the state. And when I did the EPA job, I committed to visiting every single tribe in the states, which on the mainland was California, Arizona, and Nevada. So I'd driven around most of California, been in every single county, and I was like, it's so beautiful. I just want to walk it.
Amazing. And so, as you were planning, I mean, did you do a lot of planning? Did you talk to a bunch of folks? How did it come together? Because it's quite an undertaking, as I understand.
Yeah, I don't know on the next slide if we go to, so this is, so basically the complex mathematical thing, which you don't think about, like people said, Jared, so are you prepared for the PCT? I'm like, the real preparation I should have had is being a stocker in an Amazon warehouse, because basically you have to work out how many miles you're going to walk a day, and then you send to yourself or have someone, I had friends send me these boxes that are numbered along the way, so that let's say you have a box that's 100 miles. I calculated that I'm going to walk 21 miles a day, but if I only walk 15 miles a day, I'd be incredibly hungry because I wouldn't get to the box. So
oh my God.
You have to set your level of ambition before you leave and work out, you don't think about things like, oh, I'm going to get there on a Sunday. I send it to a PO box. The post office is closed on Sundays. So the level of logistical planning was a little hellacious, but for anyone thinking about doing it, there's a lot of resources. It's easy to do. I would say that most of the food, like those pro bars, I haven't seen since then. I literally feel like throwing up looking at them. If I ever eat another frigging pro bar in my life.
You got so sick of them, right? Day in, day out.
Yeah. So next slide. So yeah, you start on the US-Mexico border. There's all kinds of cool people that these two trail angels called Frodo. Scout and Frodo pick me up at the airport. They're hikers that help hikers, and they live there. And then they bring you with their neighbors and friends to the starting point, which is actually on the Campo tribal reservation. And this is the border wall for those of you who, and the numbers actually, this is the floor of World War II aircraft carriers, which were turned into the border fence.
And what year was this, circa?
It was exactly 2016.
God, you look young in this photo.
I know, this job ages us. I mean, we need to go and do it again. So completely naive, relatively physically good shape, but completely not in shape to do the PCT. About 50% of the people can't quit in the first week. So the first week was very painful for me because not only physically, but emotionally, it's like going to junior high school, because half the people are going to leave, but everyone wants to know like the most ridiculous stuff, like how many miles you're going to hike and what food and how heavy your backpack is. The whole status, Wade, becomes how heavy your backpack is.
The lighter, the higher status?
Yes. Like if your backpack's over 15 pounds base weight, no one would really talk to you, and you're not going to be able to make the whole trip.
But how congested is the trail? I mean, you're meeting that many people in the first week?
Yeah, at the beginning, well, people start on different days. So the Pacific Crest Trail Association, which is actually they're on one of the participants. So if anyone has questions for them, they give you a permit that crosses the state and federal parks and all the land. And so they stagger it out. So no more than I think like 30 people start in a day. But you soon start catching up to the people who's got terrible blisters and shin splints and all kinds of stuff. You know, unfortunately, you get some of those. Yeah. So.
And I had heard that there has been a spike in folks walking the trail since Cheryl Strayed wrote her book, right, which was maybe called Lost.
Wild. Yeah. So the good news is that Cheryl's book really motivated a lot of women. They're still not. I would encourage. There's lots of great resources for women who want to do the trail. I would still say it's like 5-to-1 male. And so the good news is that more and more women are hiking, getting out there, and doing it. This is by the Tehachapis. Super windy. I didn't know what these at night. I hiked at night this night. This was the night that I walked 41 miles, so which is the longest single stretch that I did in a day. And you see these at night. They're just red dots and this swooshing noise. I actually didn't know what it was until the morning when you wake up.
And why the hell did you walk 41 miles in a day?
Mainly because it was so hot in the day that I decided to leave at 5 in the afternoon when it just got barely able to, you know, it was like 110. And then I just kept walking through the night and the next day was quite cool. So until 5, actually till like 8 at night the next night.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So the different ways of camping, this is cowboy camping. You don't actually need a tent. I tried to cowboy camp whenever I could because it's just so nice to wake up. But yeah, a lot of people, you camp anywhere along the trail. Next slide. This is in the Ansel Adams Wilderness, the beginning of the Sierras. The Sierras are just stunning, obviously. And for those of you who ever get the chance to do the John Muir Trail or any section there, it's just pretty incredible. Next. So wow, these are just completely different places. But on the left is Muir Pass. And on the right is in Southern California. Just shows, I guess, the contrast. This is on the right is a picture. I can't remember the name of it, but it's an ode to the founder of the Boy Scouts. Anyway, I didn't really understand, to your point about preparation, Wade, how much snow there would be. There is a lot of snow. Even in a year like this, there's a lot of snow. So,
Jared, I remember the one thing that you told me when you got back is you thought that it would be physically demanding, and of course it was, but you said it was ultimately more mentally demanding or emotionally demanding. Can you just talk about sort of you start doing these big 20-mile hikes a day, and it's just day after day after day. How does that evolve for you?
No, it's a great reminder. Yeah. So you think it's going to be physical, and the first week certainly is physical because you're just learning. You know, my feet went from size 10 to size 11 and a half at the end because you're just hammering your feet so much. So there's definitely physical aspects, but the mental part is really that you're alone. I mean, none of us spend day after day after day and night alone, and so you're left to kind of think, and every kind of aspect of yourself that you've ever not wanted to think about, you get a lot of time to think about. So my practice was kind of working out what the cycles. I just have thoughts that would just keep going through my head, and at some point you just have to stop and say, why am I thinking this? This is really bizarre. So yeah, the first 700 miles are desert. And the desert looks like kind of the right. So it's high chaparral, like generally, 6,000 to 8,000 feet. It's hot, but it really beats the cramp out of you. And the longest stretch without water supply is about 43 miles. And I think you'll see in a minute pictures people put, well, no, this is closer to Lake Tahoe. But people put caches of water out. So really the generosity of strangers is incredible on the trip. You meet just people, there's trail magic, where people come and just bring you snacks, and trail angels, which are people that like help you do your laundry, complete strangers. At the time, it was just before 2016. And I got a lot out of realizing a lot of them were Trump supporters, a lot of people who welcome me into their homes. But they're the sweetest, nicest people ever. So when we sometimes think about the way we describe a whole group of people, it's often completely in contrast to the generosity that people showed me. You have to hitchhike to each one of those boxes from the trail. So I did about 60 different hitchhikes, always super nice people. I never waited more than 10 minutes, even after dark. Amazing.
Wow.
This is at the Sonora Pass.
And at what point do you start to, the folks that drop off kind of filter out, and then you kind of understand who you're hiking around?
Great question. So that really only happens at around Washington. So you go, California is an incredibly long state, 1,600 miles on the PCT. You just can't wait to get to the end of it. You're seeing Mount Shasta for what feels like months. I mean, just so excited to finish California at that point. Oregon, super quick. I would say for anyone thinking about section hiking, either do something like the John Muir Trail or do the entire state of Washington. Washington is my favorite state by far. The Cascades are incredible.
Why was that? Just the scenic beauty?
Yeah, I'd never hiked in Washington. The blueberries and huckleberries, the wildlife, just the terrain is incredibly foreign to me. And to your point, you're really with a crew of people who's going to finish. So interestingly, the median age, I say, when you start is like 23, and it's probably 5-to-1 male to female. At the end, I'd say the average age is like 32 and about half female, half male. So a lot of young men drop out. They're wimps. They pretend that they're all macho, but they just can't keep it.
Fascinating. And remind us, so I mean, what's the total length, and then what's the season that you have to hit? You talked a little bit about that.
2,665 miles. And you have to start, I started May 9th. Some people started earlier. You can start as early as right now, in a dry year. And then you have to finish in Canada by like September 20th, because otherwise it starts snowing.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So what do we look? Yeah.
This is Mount Rainier, and they're just incredible clouds. The trail, like, how in life people say, Wade, you just got to find your path. And once you find your path, like, it was so amazing just to wake up every morning and there's the path. And unlike any other path you've ever done, it just keeps going in one direction. So you never see the same landscape again. Like, you open your senses so much, like, you can hear everything. You very, very rarely hear a car or a plane. Those sounds are incredibly jarring. Like, when you hear any mechanical noise, it's really off-putting, and disturbing. And going into this whole journey, I thought would be the hardest part. Leaving it was much harder. Like, going back into a city was like terrifying.
So, and what, like, as you'd go up the trail, what's the largest community that you'd have to encounter, going to get a box at a post office?
I mean, they're all really rural, really rural communities. As we went further north, like, I went into Portland to visit a friend, and I went into Seattle, and then you end up in Vancouver. But they're weeks at a stretch where you're not hearing any noises. Amazing.
And then, just as you're doing this, I wanted to ask you, are you reflecting on nature? Are you thinking work thoughts around protecting nature and the climate change, or are you just in your own sort of zone?
Yeah, the two things that I thought about the most, because family obviously was like, do you think a lot? Are you missing family? I'm like, there's really two things that you only think about: food and water. and mainly it was water. Like you become very attuned to the sound of water because you collect the water from streams, obviously. And for the, I basically didn't at the end up filtering it, just because you get so attuned to, like, if it's cold and fast moving and it's from a stream or a spring. So water is number one. And every time you get a chance to fill your bottle, because you start in the desert, your mind gets very programmed around that. And then I was always hungry. I think you burn, I don't know, but it's way above 8,000 calories a day, and you're eating, maybe 2,500 calories a day. So you're very, very hungry. And
are you worried about apex predators at any point between the bears and the mountain lions, or is that just a little bit
you
of
see all of them, you hear them, they come to your tent. No, after a while, you're just pretty focused. And one of the things you notice about nature, as opposed to that civilized world, nature is incredibly non-judgmental. Like there's not a lot of, nature's not judging you. There's not a lot of sense of, like, you're not going to be able to do much about wildlife is the least concern. The number one concern that I have is other people on the trail, but mainly they're other PCT people, because it's so rural that unless you're hiking the PCT, you're not going to go out for an afternoon stroll on these paths. They're just too far from any road.
And what's the common, this would be interesting because I know we have some people that have done the PCT on as part of this event here today. And I should mention that if folks have questions or thoughts or observations that they want to share, please just type it into the Q&A function, and then we'll shift to answering some of those. But is there a common denominator of who's on the trail, either physically, emotionally, demographically?
No, the oldest person that I was with who finished it, who was a Korea War veteran, called All the Way, he was 60, he was 71. And the youngest was a 14-year-old boy with his mom. And they were doing 16 miles a day. And the Korean War veteran was, oh no, he must have been a Vietnam War veteran. He was doing like 22 miles a day. So no, really it's people, once you start it, it becomes a kind of big family, a way of life. There were people that had formerly been homeless who were living on food stamps doing it, all the way through people who were like wealthy who wanted to always do this in their life. So the coolest thing is, like, literally every walk of life, every kind of person. In my longer slideshow there's every place, there's certain places you put the food, like those power bars that I hated. And there were people who literally lived on the boxes of food left by others along the trail.
Incredible. And you mentioned Frodo and Scout as sort of the trail angels at the beginning, and then this gentleman All the Way. So talk to us about trail names, right? Because is that a thing on the PCT?
Yeah. So next slide. I don't know what, this is like a potpourri of slides. So this is the end. Let's keep going. I'm trying to think of who their trail names was. Well, this is the Cascades.
I think our folks abridged your slideshow significantly. So sorry about that.
The abridging is no problem, but the order, like, we just had the end, so we can come back to that. So on the left, they have markers that tell you kind of how far you've gone. The first 500 and then 1,000 are pretty huge. The right is the Cascades, the Northern Cascades. Just shows you kind of the contours of that landscape. My trail name was Poppy. Everyone gets a trail name that intends to be a through hiker. And yeah, it generally has to do with some silly story. Like I had a friend called Sour Rip, and she loved those sour candies and farted a lot. So that was her name, Sour Rip. So yeah, the sillier the name, the better. Mine wasn't that silly. I was trying to explain to two people that they couldn't pick the California poppy because it was the state flower, and thought it was ridiculous. So yeah, that was at the beginning. Okay, next, let's just see what
let's go back to there, because I think that was the last one.
Okay, so this one is Yeah, this is you can see it's kind of laser cut. That's the Canadian-US border through the trees. And people kind of wait. I just heard from Ella, who actually was from the town I grew up in Cambridge. She now lives in Seattle, and um, she's still hiking. A lot of these people end up, that guy down there is called Cheese. The guy who was next to me at the top was like 18. So some really young people doing it. Yeah. So, I mean, the one lesson you learn is that we all have just one life to live, and it's pretty short. And this thing was like, I'm so glad I did it. And I would encourage anyone who has an inkling of doing it. The biggest thing people say to you on the outside, who haven't done the PCT, is like, how do you find the time? How could you possibly find 4 months? And it isn't that expensive to do. You're living on very little each day. So that's the other thing. People think it must be very expensive to do. But finding the time is hard. Obviously, we all lead really busy lives. So section hiking is, you can do 200 miles, you could do a state, just being in nature and then falling asleep and then waking up and knowing you're going to get to do it for months really changes your mindset. And I can't express how amazing it is to do it.
It's incredible. And I remember when you said that you were off to do it, and I lamely shared that reflection of, God, how can Jared find the time to do it? And the fact is, you used it as an opportunity in your life, and you went off and did it. Incredible. PCT is one of many very long trails in the United States. Maybe the Appalachian Trail is even more well known than the PCT, and I think they're working to essentially join or finalize the trail through the Rocky Mountains. We've got a question, or a sort of a salutation from Jack Haskell at the Pacific Crest Trail Association. And he points out that, first of all, the same year that the PCT was first through hiked was 1970, which was, of course, the first Earth Day, which is pretty remarkable. And then he wanted to ask you and me, Jared, sort of, what do we think is the importance or significance of the Pacific Crest Trail to the state of California, given you and I lead the environmental agencies? And then, what is the potential relationship or opportunity for the state to support, more for the PCT, but then also, other long trails in the state? So I'll turn it to you first.
Well, thanks, Jack. He does an amazing job of kind of organizing. There's really skeletal crew that just really supports everyone who does the hike. And without that support, we wouldn't get it done. I mean, the values, I think, I can't remember, maybe Jack can pull it up, but the language, like the preambular language in the congressional bill that frames out why we spiritually and kind of emotionally and physically need and benefit from these trails is kind of an amazing concept. And so to me, we're always looking for that kind of utilitarian, how does this benefit us or the economy? Or it just feels like, especially in a wild state like California, that it's important to have open spaces, and it's important to be able to just keep hiking. So yeah, anything that I think these are California values. For me, it's a California value that you should be able to walk in wild areas uninterrupted for extended periods of time, to be able to understand our relationship and how we connect to nature. So Wade, this is more a state parks issue about what we could do, but there's still areas in Oregon, not in California, that you walk where it's been decimated by clear-cut logging, and it really, really is pretty painful. You've been in nature and you suddenly see these clear-cut areas. So making the area of the walk protected from wildfire and other risks is really complicated. But I don't know, that we should work out what we could do.
Well, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, we live in a state of 40 million people. And it's remarkable that we can actually get into the wilderness. And I think we're both really motivated by the idea of there being wilderness that people can get to. And the PCT is not only wilderness that you can get to, but wilderness you can travel through. And it's pretty remarkable if you think about the Western United States, how much wilderness there is. My own, experience over the last, 14, 15 months is it's been a bit of a lifesaver for me and my family. This has been obviously a really challenging year professionally, but also personally for a lot of us, just feeling uncertainty, fear, a sense of losing parts of your life and relationships. And I've spent more time outdoors in the last year than I have in the last 2 decades. And it's been incredible. I was on a hike just a few weeks ago for the first time. I live in Sacramento. You can get 45 minutes from my house. You can be up in the American River watershed and be in some really wild areas, beautiful areas. And I saw Sierra newts for the first time in these tributaries. Jared, have you ever seen these incredible, flourishing of newts?
Yeah.
Incredible, and it's, so I think one thing that we're working to do, as Jared, thanks to, our boss, Governor Newsom, is to identify where there are other opportunities to conserve more of California. And we've got this so-called 30 by 30 target of conserving 30% of our 100 million acres by 2030. Now, some of it is obviously, not wilderness area. Conservation can occur on working lands like your farms and ranches, but a part of it is really making sure that we have this wilderness area where people can actually go and disconnect. And importantly, animals and ecosystems can be left intact. So to me, the PCT is sort of the gem of, California's wilderness access. I will say, I do know there's efforts to continue to conserve and protect the trail. I've done some work with the John Muir Trail Conservancy, which is a new nonprofit, and I went up with them into the High Sierra last year where their folks, their interns and staff were doing things like removing illegal camping sites right next to streams or right along lakes, and cataloging certain cultural resources like the piles of obsidian shard where native peoples had traveled through. So I think there's a lot of that potentially to support across the state.
Cool. Can I, James, can you let me share the screen? And then, because I wanted to show a picture of, I don't know, in a minute, if you can let me do it.
You should have the ability.
Cool. So another, I don't know if you can see this. Let's see. Can you see it, Wade?
Totally. It looks like you're holding an umbrella in a tree.
Yeah. So I had an umbrella. There's a whole gear thing about literally everyone who successfully hiked the PCT had an umbrella. And it got so hot in the middle of the day that I would scurry underneath these manzanitas and put the umbrella up because it was just so hot.
Oh my God.
Yeah. This was really cool because this was Melody Sees. She's a tribal leader who I'd worked with at EPA. And by complete chance, in the first time in 20 years, she was doing a sweat lodge with her family in her yard. And I happened to bump into her on that day and do the sweat at the beginning. She's with the Los Coyotes tribe.
Come on.
Really amazing beginning it felt so powerful to be with this tribe. And I saw coyotes along the way, like on really amazing spots. And it felt like the tribe was with me the whole way. We did the sweat the whole night. It was pretty amazing. Just the scenery. I'm just going to keep going. You can ask questions.
Please. No, do it.
Yeah. The food. I literally brought mainly corn pasta because I read this old book about like how corn pasta is the thing to eat. It was so disgusting. It took so much water that I didn't have. Literally, I didn't know what I was going to do because Wade, I had 31 boxes of corn pasta coming to me. And I was like, I just can't eat it anymore. So I would go and buy ramen or anything I could to not eat it. These are the water caches. Literally, these saved our lives. Volunteers would go and bring water from their community and put them in completely arid places. And without these, this was the class of 2016, and you'd write a thank you note. But without these trail angels, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So just the generosity of strangers is pretty incredible. We saw that picture. This is the one flower that accompanies you from the border to the border, which is lupine. And the lupine or lupin smell so fragrant, and they change in color. But for me, this was the flower. Whenever I see them, it reminds me of the PCT. And this is my tent. And there's the trail. Sometimes you're just so tired at night, you just sleep next to the trail, because it's just you can sleep anywhere pretty much, but just like sometimes there are times that in the Cascades that the trail was the only flat ground, so I'd actually sleep on the trail because it was the only place that was level.
And Jared, is most of this federal land, like Bureau of Land Management and U.S. Forest Service?
Yeah, most of it's wilderness land, which I didn't realize wilderness meant that you can have no motorized anything. Huge number of rattlesnakes. If you don't like rattlesnakes, I was with this Japanese guy who at the beginning, I guess I don't exactly know what he thought about rattlesnakes, but he would pick them up by the tail and then swing them around and throw them off the trail, which I was like, wow, I'm not going to do that. Yeah, just the beauty of what you realize about the trail, and a lot of people ask Wade is, well, what was the most beautiful part? And the truth is, if you didn't find beauty in the everyday small thing around you, you would be waiting to see something magnificent and classical all day. But the beauty of the small things are kind of what keep you going. Saw that one. So this is called, I can't remember, it has a name for it. Jack will remind me, but basically, it's a hiker tan. So I lost my toenail. You can see I tape my feet every day with surgical tape. You have a pair of flip-flops that you put on in the camp so that you don't need to be walking around in your shoes. No one hikes in boots, no one. Everyone hikes in not in flip-flops, but in basically running shoes. So the gear stuff is really important, but yeah, your feet get mangled. This I put in especially for Wade. This is the water pipeline that goes from the Owens Lake to LA. And I thought it was going to be an open canal. So I was really excited to get my water. And then you get there and it's like a massive frigging pipe.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Other questions? People can ask questions while, Wade, I'm just going to keep going with the pictures.
Yeah, we love the pictures, so keep it coming.
So this was the before and after. So you're here, and then suddenly you see this sheep herder come. Literally, the next moment, it's like thousands of sheep.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So this is the Mojave. This is the section which is like 43 miles between water sources, but that people did put water in a place so that I couldn't make it. You can't, a liter of water, well, I never realized this because I'm really stupid, but that 16 ounces of fluid weighs 16 ounces. So water is pretty heavy, and your backpacks are not actually capable of carrying enough water for 2 days. So it's a little bit of a tricky situation if people don't put the water out. This is the end of the desert. This is to Kennedy Meadows South. Another funny story, there's a Kennedy Meadows North. But I agreed to meet my wife and daughter for the only part I was going to see them on the trail at Kennedy Meadows. And they went to the north and I was at the south.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
How many miles are they separated by?
Like 4 hours driving. Yeah. This is my friend SpongeBob, and she got all her food from, this shows you like, okay, this is probably the most useful slide on the entire thing. So everyone plugs in their iPhone and device. You can see how many chargers there are. So anytime there's an outlet, it's like every ounce of energy is sucked into a machine. And then you can see the gas, the the suntan cream, the peanut butter. So when she found that I hated the corn pasta and the pro bar, literally, she was like, I'll hike with you, then I can just eat all the stuff you don't want to eat. So she was
amazing.
Yeah. Just the trail is just so beautiful. This is wood up at the beginning of what would be the John Muir Trail. Every day at lunch, I would dry out my sleeping bag and my pillow and my tent from the night, because often there's a lot of condensation. This is actually not a sleeping bag. So the other thing about the PCT is you kind of have to change completely when you get to the Sierras. So this is called a sleeping quilt. It weighs less than a pound. You could not survive in the Sierras with it, but you can for the desert. So this was a tribal, all the tribes that I'd worked with in the Bishop area came together, and there's actually in the beginning of June something called a flag burning, where old flags, especially in the military and police, they burn the old flags, but the tribes do that every year. And that's my wife on the far left, who came to visit since we couldn't visit in Kennedy Meadows. And then this is the beginning of the snow. This is by Forrester Pass. And you just see it stretched out in front of you. You're like, gee, okay, this is a lot of snow.
But you can follow the trail?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, people have, I don't know, you can't really see anyone on it, but people had micro spikes. I just kept my shoes on. Oh, the other thing that I haven't talked about. So the number one thing that you wouldn't think you would need is an umbrella. The number two thing you need is poles, hiking poles. So literally those are the two things that every single hiker who succeeded had. These are just pictures of just the beauty. This is the top of one of these passes. This is one of the least favorite. Oh, I'm glad. Yeah. So the least favorite things is, so we talk a lot, Wade, about snow melt. Well, snow melt doesn't melt if it's not melting. So at night, when you wake up this is like 5 a.m, the rivers are significantly lower than they are in the afternoons. But what I hadn't realized is that they're also very wet, because this log is actually submerged in the middle of the day and super, super slippery. And I was not thinking, and I walked over it and went right into the water, which was quite cold and not very fun. But you also have to walk across a lot of this thing that scared the most people, and once experienced hikers kind of got into the Sierras, was crossing these rivers was the thing that made the most people turn back, and probably the most dangerous thing you'll do on the PCT. Another place of just pictures to show people, like, this is what you get to sleep and wake up there. A lot of wildlife just used to you on the path. A lot of more snow. So this was in a hot year, 2016, and even so, the lakes are still frozen in July. Marmots, snow, you get snowed on. This was, I got caught in a snowstorm in Tahoe. Yeah, you're normally meant to step across the stones, but you can't. Other hikers that you just meet, that you see at different times. These people actually were on some bizarre hiking and busing route. I didn't quite understand it. They had
hiking and going by bus?
Yeah, they had like 2 minivans, and they would like cross in and off, and they would only go downhill. They did the whole PCT, but just the downhill sections. So yeah, just the beauty of, yeah.
And didn't our former colleague Jennifer Montgomery come in?
Yeah, she's, I don't know what happened to my ability to share. Oh yeah. So this is, I went through 6 pairs of shoes. They do about 400 or 500 miles each. When you get your new pair, it's literally like you've died and gone to heaven. This is the top of the Tuolumne River watershed. So this is the water that feeds Michael, Carl, and Celery. No, I'm teasing Michael. The city and county of San Francisco. And this is the thing where, yeah, the site, this is an old one, but this is what, if you don't see this for a few miles, you're lost and you're on the wrong trail. So you're looking for these are kind of subconsciously, this is the PCT trail sign. This is another place.
Did you ever get badly lost?
No, you really can't get too badly lost. So this is the example of 1,000 miles, which is like a big deal. When you get to 1,000, you're feeling pretty good. Unfortunately, you got 1,600 miles to go. Sonora Pass.
And how long were you on the trail in total?
I started May 9th and I finished September 10th. So like 4 months. A lot of, one of the things you see the most, Wade, the most prevalent aspect of the landscape is forest fire. So you see
more and more so.
Yeah. Stopped. This is in Sayed Valley. There happened to be a State of Jefferson Harley Davidson ride. They didn't quite know what to make of me.
I want to talk to you about the environment on the trail, or did you just not leave that identity behind?
Yeah, you kind of, no one actually cares about what you've done before, which is refreshing, and no one wants to talk about it. They generally want to talk about how many Advil you've taken, what food you're eating, how spicy it is, how many miles you're going to hike tomorrow, where the next water is. These are the PCT is actually for only hikers and horses. These are the only horses I saw on the 2,600 miles. And they were doing like a 1,000-mile section. This was the National Forest Service. As I said, wilderness areas, you can have no motorized anything. So these two ladies and this dude were just allowing the path to be free of downed trees, which is super cool. This is how you filter the water. You put it in a bag and you squeeze it through this reverse osmosis, and then you put it into the water bottle. So every morning where you had to clean the water, this is what you would do. It kind of became an exhausting routine. It's called a Sawyer. Anyone who's interested, for like $29, you can get one. Like, this is a Sawyer Mini. I would not encourage you. I'd get the Sawyer Normal because there's not enough flow in the Sawyer Mini. There's Trail Angels. Literally, this guy was like in Oregon, and he picked you're by the side of the road. He's like, do you need a place to stay? He happened to be like a marijuana cultivator. So this is my get up. So Wade, you can see like I can be arms free. I basically got this little thing where I put my umbrella in my breast pocket and then put the straps of my backpack over it. And so I could walk, and I got my poles. So this is like, I had no change of shirt. So the same shirt, you wash it in the water, and one pair of trousers, 2 pairs of socks, 2 pairs of underwear, and that's it. So
unbelievable. And does everybody smell horrible?
Yeah. So not horrible. When I came back, my wife, Alex, said for the first 3 months, I smelled like compost.
You just smell like
it's not a horrible smell, but you're in the ground, and you smell like, I didn't recognize it. You can't smell it on anyone. No one smells because everyone smells. So my cousin Yair, who was an Israeli paratrooper, came. This is a typical breakfast in a town where you're picking up your box. Like, I could have had 3 or 4 orders of those pancakes.
Oh my God, those are 6 huge pancakes.
Yeah, but literally I was still hungry. Like, and people would hate it. They know the PCT was coming in. We would finish an entire jar of syrup between 2 people.
Because you're just basically hoarding the calories.
Yeah, just looking at it now, I'm just like, oh, I want it again. So this is Oregon. A lot of horrible. I didn't realize there's so many volcanoes. A lot of volcanic lands in Oregon. Hazelnuts on the trail. If you've ever seen hazelnuts, just the landscapes are just. Blueberries. The biggest difficult thing, Wade, on blueberries was like, if you don't stop to eat them, you feel terrible. If you stop too long, then you're not making the miles. And so like, there's always a fine balance, but I couldn't help myself. Mount Hood in Oregon. And this is called the Bridge of Gods. This is crossing the Columbia River Gorge from Oregon into Washington. Pretty meaningful place. And then this was like, I ended up with a whole crew of people in Washington, to your point, where we hiked together. We were called a PCT family. And this woman's called Bay. She had a partner, her girlfriend was called Onse. So Bay and Onse. But Onse could only do half of California, so Bay ended up with us. And Sifu, that was the guy behind her. Sifu was the first person from China to ever finish the PCT. So Oregon, like the coolest thing about the PCT is these trail pictures, Wade. Like you can see the trail going and going and going, often for miles and miles. And it just kind of gives you that sense of continuity.
Incredible.
That's actually Rainier. So this is Wade, like is the poster child for why you'd want to go to the Northern Cascades. I mean, it's just like jaw-droppingly beautiful and just a completely different landscape than the Sierras.
Stunning.
Other questions, people? Like I'm just, yeah.
No, this is beautiful. I mean, I
think
here's
here's someone who, so that's Sifu in the back, and then this is a typical person that would pick us up to go hitchhiking to our box, our PO box, to get our food. Not a lot of seatbelts, but the point is that like just crazy people would pick you up. It was kind of wacky. And this is when you get your food, this is what it looks like. You're getting your box. Everyone just opens it up. Like nearly every single person. So at the bottom, you can see tortillas, that cherry pie, and Nutella. But most people's lunch, Wade, was Nutella in a tortilla.
Yeah, because you don't want to stop. You don't want, it's easy.
Right.
Do you trade out of each other's boxes?
Yes. I wouldn't have traded with this person because he just had really crappy ramen and and really, and it started, 2,500. So this is the most miserable time. It just started raining and raining and raining in Washington, and raining and the PCT are a miserable combination.
Hey, as you're talking, I know we've got just a little bit of time. Our good friend Tracy, who we both know, asked a good question. You know, clearly life-changing experience. How did life or living look different when you returned home? Obviously, other than the noise or and the urbanity, have you been able to keep and sustain the perspective?
It's a great question, Tracy, and I wish I could say the answer was yes. So the perspective that changes. I mean, it was pretty clear when you're out on the trail that we're, especially looking up at the stars at night and just the millions and millions of stars, that we're all just part of the same universe. Like we spend so much time thinking that we're separate, especially as humans, that we're better and different than, but when you're out there, you realize that we come from nature and that nature is part of us. And I spend a lot of time thinking about kind of the beginning of the universe and Big Bang Theory and like how there was this infinitesimally dense atom that expanded to create time and space, and like we're part of that. And also just what you feel very present. So, I mean, I spend a lot of time trying to achieve being in the moment, and in nature, it's like you just add water and you're ready to go. I mean, you are present to yourself and your surroundings the entire time without any effort. And all the distractions in nature are pretty amazing things, like smell. Like the smell of nature is incredibly intoxicating, and the smell of cities was really hard. So the hardest thing is I've done a lot of hiking since, and I can't wait to do more. So it gave me the hiking bug. I ended up doing part of that trail, Wade, in New Mexico called the Continental Divide Trail. I did the section hike there. I did this trail in the UK called the Pennine Way. So it made me kind of more addicted to hiking. This is drying out everything after the 2 days of, this is my entire backpack contents. I realized at the end it was the only picture I
And
had.
did you hit the 15 pounds or under status level?
Oh yeah, I was always between 11 and 12. It really, after a while, it isn't about status. It is, but it shouldn't be. It's about, like, the lighter you can get, the less pressure you're putting on all your muscles and your feet and your tendons. And like, it really is just math. Like, the more you carry, the worse it is for your body.
You know, Jared, we got a question from Stacy too, who leads the Rural Counties Caucus. So why don't you got just about 10 more slides, get through those and then we'll.
Yeah, I'm doing both. This is a kind of wild raspberry. Someone's going to remind me of the name of it. Literally the best thing you will ever have in nature. I was so, thimbleberry. These are called thimbleberries. If you ever see a thimbleberry, and most people are terrified of eating red things in nature, so they didn't eat them. So I ate a lot of them. So this is about a day, to your point, Wade, everyone starts congregating, everyone starts bunching up, like we all knew each other. We'd all have lunch together, we'd have breakfast, we'd camp together, but we'd hike separately. And this is the last day. This is a beautiful lake just on the Canadian border. Me looking really skinny and insane. And I saw that picture. And then my brother from England came to meet me in Vancouver. We all the people from the PCT went out for a few nights. And then I got to go and see my first orca. And that is it. Yeah. Oh, there's a teeny bit more. And then, yeah. So now I've gone hiking, snowshoeing, and cross-country skiing on the PCT in the winter in California, and it's really cool to see the same place from a different perspective. That's it.
Jared, two final questions. The first one comes from Stacy Corliss, who leads the Rural Counties Association, Rural Counties Caucus, RCRC of California. She's also a Mono County supervisor and was nice enough to take me on a socially distanced hike just about 3 weeks ago when I was on my way to promote a volunteering at a vaccination clinic in Inyo County. So nice. Big thanks, Stacy. But her question is, you know, through hiking the PCT is amazing, challenging. We're seeing a big increase in demand for people to be outdoors and in the wilderness, particularly during the pandemic. But a lot of our natural recreational areas can't handle the surge. How can we build a shared land ethic and grow a sense of shared stewardship while increasing access? So access versus preservation of wilderness. Question number one. Question number two, to finish this off, we talk a lot about crises and everything that's wrong on the environment. And I remember you, when you came back, you said it kind of gave you a sense of positivity about sort of this from this place of abundance. So can you answer both of those questions to conclude us here?
Yeah, of course. So just thanks, Stacey, for the question. Really strong ethic of leave no trace. I mean, absolutely no trace, and making sure that every single thing that you do, from where you put your tent to every aspect of your action on the trail, is to leave no trace. So I think everyone who does the PCT becomes very indoctrinated in that. Everyone talks about that a lot, and people are kind of shunned if they're making, you know, any kind of mess, any kind of leaving any impact is really, really not cool. And part of the ethos and culture of doing the trail is to explain that to people, especially people who may not be doing the whole thing, but just coming out for a day. So making sure that we really respect those trails systems is one. And then, yeah, it just leaves you a sense of just being connected to a larger community, realizing why we're doing the work, that there's just such beauty in nature, that we have that beauty in ourselves, that we can really, especially to your point, Wade, I mean, we are so lucky to live on the West Coast of the United States and live in California. There's so many places to go that can give us a renewed sense of hope and ability to take on some of the big challenges that we do. So yeah, it is definitely something, whether it's a weekend or a week or longer, that you can do to get out there. Encourage you all to do it, and really appreciate you, Wade, for hosting this, and all the folks at the at your agency, Natural Resources, that do day in, day out protecting and stewarding our land.
Well, Jared, huge thanks. And James, can you cue up the last slide on Earth Day week as we conclude here? Just a note that tomorrow we're going to be in conversation with our state conservancies, which is one of many events that we have here at Earth Week or Earth Day week. But Jared, you can take down that last slide, James, and we'll go back to the view. I just want to thank you. I mean, one, we've just lived vicariously for the last 60 minutes, so it's incredible to see and to hear about that experience. And just big thanks to you putting the time and energy and passion into this work. I think we get, a lot of us know each other as colleagues, but probably behind or within each of us that do this work, conserving and protecting the environment, there's this kind of passion. So thanks a ton for sharing yours. Keep up the great work and have a great Earth Day later this week.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd say is there's so many people in this community that are willing to give anyone who's listening any information about how they did it, the logistics, anything you want to know, there's going to be people who can help. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Have a great week and happy Earth Day.